Hello, welcome to HLA Live. HLA Live is our regular broadcast on the HLA YouTube channel as well as all the other social media channels. Each week we talk to interesting people from across the HLA community.
Good evening, everyone. I am really excited to be chairing tonight's meeting.
Hi, I'm Rosie Spooner and I'm hosting HLA Live this Wednesday.
And I'm an HLA scholar and I'm also going to be your host this evening.
To share with us their ideas and their innovations and hopefully bring them to a global audience.
Quite quick, we have ideas, let's do this, let's do that. So
many of the topics come from our community, with scholars and faculty expressing an interest in many of the discussions that we're about to have.
Hello everyone and welcome to the HLA Live session on widening participation in the postgraduate realm.
Homelessness and health.
Addiction and the new normal.
HLA programs are built on 6 pillars. The leader is an innovator and entrepreneur. The leader is a communicator. The leader is a manager. The leader as a negotiator. The leader as a follower. And the leader as a philosopher. If you are interested in becoming a HLA scholar, why not get in contact? Many of the episodes in HLA Live will cover one or more of these important pillars. The HLA team consists of Pedra, Eamon, Tim, Riddy, Alistair, Adil and Trisha, and a range of other HLA scholars and faculty.
So thanks for inviting me to present. The title of my talk is Visualizing Medicine. So just a bit about myself. My name is Armando Hasudungan Feigl, and I'm the creator of Armando Hasudungan. I create hand-written or drawn video tutorials and illustrations on a range of subjects, from the basics of anatomy and physiology to the more complicated immunology and biochemistry. Here's an example of one of my drawings on pain, I guess the perception of pain, the physiology of pain. And this was based on a video. So this is a final image of a hand-drawn video. And these videos I upload onto a YouTube channel. So this is my YouTube channel called Armando Hasudungan. So I just thought I'd share with you my creative journey and how I got to where I am right now and what am I doing right now. So this is a map of Australia. And if no one knows much about Australia, I guess Sydney is pretty popular here on the bottom right, but I live in an area next to Gold Coast, sort of 2 hours from Gold Coast, in the middle of nowhere, sort of called Toowoomba. I went to high school in Toowoomba. This is the high school I went to. Very green, very nice. So in high school, I was a very I didn't actually do much science at all. I was an artsy student. I did more art. I did languages, and I did some music, but I didn't do any physics, chemistry, or biology for my final years. So this is one of my drawings that I did during high school. This is called, I forgot when I did this, but this is called the 3 skulls. And the premise of this is there are 3 skulls hidden in the image. I'm just highlighting it there. And then, I mean, these are some other sketches and whatnot. So on the right, there's some graffiti. I'm very much into graffiti. I've never graffitied on a wall, but hopefully one day, maybe. I don't know how professional that is, but you know. So it was after high school when I didn't know what to do. Initially, I wanted to do physiotherapy. But in order to do physiotherapy, you needed a prerequisite in science, which I didn't have at high school. So I had to do a biomedical degree. So, you know, I didn't have any experience in biology really, or chemistry or all that stuff. So I actually heavily relied on illustrations. And this is an illustration from one of the textbooks that I used. Here you can see a diagram of the spleen in a cross-section of the gastrointestinal system. And here is another example of an illustration from a textbook that I was using at biomedical science. This is, as you can see, a a stem cell differentiating into different types of cells in our body, immune cells, red blood cells, and whatnot. And these are illustrations from Martini and Nath. This is one of many textbooks I used, and a lot of illustrations that I based my understanding of these topics from. So progressing through my biomedical degree, I came across some beautiful drawings. So here is a cross section of a heart, and here is another diagram of a person who has something called right-sided heart failure, and you can see they're quite we call it edematous. They're very fluid overloaded. They're quite cyanotic. They're blue, and these are illustrations by a person called Frank Netta, and he is quite an inspiration to me and what got me into drawing. Also, relying on the illustrations through my studies, I actually also tried to do my own style, and I picked up my own style by looking at other people's style. So here is a diagram from a very popular journal article, actually, and this diagram essentially represents what happens to your coronary arteries when plaque forms and then ruptures. This is a representation of when someone has a heart attack. You can see a clot forming and whatnot. And similarly, this is another diagram, but from a different journal article, another famous journal article, and again, depicting the same concept, that this is the coronary arteries, the arteries that supply your heart, and plaques are forming and it's bursting, causing a thrombus. So it's just interesting to see how, the same type of information is being represented. It's being drawn in a different style. So one is from a famous, very popular medical journal called Nature Medicine, I guess, and the other one is from another one called New England Journal of Medicine. Again, similarly, here is another diagram on what's called coronary artery bypass, which is basically where they take vessels from elsewhere in your body and insert it into your heart to help blood supply, to help blood flow in the heart. So that's from a journal article, and then another same representation on a different journal article. So you can appreciate the different styles of drawing or illustrations. And again, they have very specific styles. So, this got me to, I guess, find my own style, I guess. And these are one of the first illustrations I did during my biomedical degree. And this is a drawing of a brain, and the brain is made up of neurons. And then, the neurons are sending impulses through each other, communicating with each other. And these impulses that travel along the axon here rely on the differences in chemicals, sodium, coming into the cell, propagating this sort of electric impulses down. So this is what I started doing, and this is what I started doing in order to, I guess, understand what I was studying during my biomedical degree, because I really relied on illustrations. And it wasn't until I had a pharmacology assignment during I think it was my first year of biomedicine, that we had to select a topic to present, a drug to present. And I had a great idea. I had a great idea after watching a YouTube video called RSA Animate, where it was this guy that drew on a whiteboard and sort of explained a particular concept. And so I thought, hey, why don't I do that? So I did. I did a whiteboard or paper-based illustration, and I recorded myself on a drug called etanercept, which is a TNF-alpha antagonist used in rheumatological diseases. TNF-alpha is like a cytokine that's released by cells, and it propagates an inflammatory reaction. And so this etanercept, the drug, sort of binds and inhibits TNF-alpha from acting around your body, and so it suppresses the immune system. And this is my very first illustrative drawing that I did, and it's pretty bad. I mean, you can see the shadows there. So, but you know, what I learned doing that video was that I was able to retain information, understand information, and most importantly, explain the information. And I realized that, you know, this was a very effective way of learning for me. And so I started doing it again on other topics, mainly immunology. So here is another video earlier on in the first year. This is a video on toll-like receptors. And so, yeah, I just kept doing this until, I guess this was one of the most recent videos. Actually, this was about 2 years ago. This is on the anatomy of the nasal cavity. And this is essentially the blood supply to the nasal cavity. That's your nose there. So, you know, I've created all these videos, and I produce final images from these videos. And so I'll just take you through some of them. So for example, here is a final image or part of a final image on a video on acute coronary syndrome. And it really just tells you the story about how a normal heart, the blood vessel supplying the normal heart develops plaques, like lipid plaques, and eventually they could obstruct and rupture, causing thrombosis. And then you get, you know, no oxygen supplying your heart muscles, and so they die, and that's called a heart attack. And you know, the risk factors and whatnot. Here's the same diagram, but I guess this it's actually a bigger video. So it talks, you know, about the mechanism and the ECG changes and whatnot. And here's another video, one of my earlier videos on immunology, which I mentioned earlier. Actually, this is, I'm a big fan of immunology, and this is a video on the adaptive immune system. Here is another immunology final image of a video on the mucosal immune system. So mucosal immunity is quite neglected. We all know about, you know, the immune system in our skin and whatnot, in our blood, but the mucosal immune system, the lining of our digestive system, for example, is very, very important because you have millions of bacteria living right inside you. And so this needs to be regulated by your immune cells there. Here is another final image on some anatomy videos. So this is one on the ear, different parts of the ear, the physiology of the ear as well. Here's again the anatomy of the eyelid. Again, a video on this. I started also doing videos on certain diseases, summaries. So here is a video on of the final image of a video on celiac disease, and it really goes through the important fundamentals, the clinical presentation, investigation, management, and pathophysiology. Similarly, this is another video on endometriosis. Again, those different, those important topics of endometriosis that we need to learn at medical school. Finally, this is just the physiology of the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands sit above your kidneys, and they produce a lot of important hormones, stress hormones mainly, such as adrenaline and cortisol. So all of these videos and all of these images, all these videos are found within the website, and they're available there. I made them available there for free to the public. And I guess the driving force behind me creating this is, one, as I mentioned, I realized that doing these videos helped my studies throughout my biomedical degree, but also through my medical degree, and now as a doctor as well. But also, I realized that these videos have helped other people along the way through the comments on YouTube, for example, and that sort of drove me even further. So part of that drive made me want to create a website. So I created a website called armandoh.org. Just to continue on with that. This is just a screenshot of the website. I created, I sort of categorized the videos onto the different subjects. And I also decided to create, during my medical degree, create notes on different topics and more images and summaries. So here, for example, is a note, my notes on the renal cell carcinoma. And again, it just talks about, anatomy, risk factors, signs and symptoms, and all that. And these are all for free on the website. So that was just a summary of my journey and I guess where how I progressed and why I created these videos and where they're found. I just wanted to mention now, I guess, touch on medical education and my thoughts on it, because this is what the seminar's focusing on. I guess goals in medical school, there are a lot of goals, obtaining clinical knowledge as a doctor, theoretical knowledge, also very important, passing exams, and also very important is balancing this with social life, as well as, research, as research has an important role in getting into programs or training programs and whatnot. But there's a lot of struggles in medical school as well. I mean, I found that there was too many topics to cover. There's a lot of cramming last minute. You actually miss out on key points and take-home messages. And to this day, finding the right study method that works for you. Another struggle I thought was that there are actually there's so many resources available now to medical students at hand. I remembered when I was a medical student, it was, the apps and all these new websites, medical websites, and also YouTube channels, they started, accumulating. Then there's now a lot of channels, there's now a lot of apps, there's a lot of medical websites available, which is a good thing, but also it's difficult because, which one is the best or which one works for you. I find this a bit of a struggle myself. A quote from, I forgot who said, but someone said, "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." So I guess my suggestion and my philosophy is self-learning, figure out what works for you. And that's also very difficult. But also, secondly, once you do that, have a group learning session, share your knowledge with each other, solidify what you've learned, and this will help get you by and help make you retain that information you learn. I just thought I'd share with you some research or some things I've learned about effective studying methods, also relating or not to illustration. So this is my Instagram page. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because of a quote that I've had there since I created the page. And one of my one of my favorite quotes, which is "Repetitio est mater studiorum." And I'm pretty sure what that means is repetition is the mother of studying, basically, is the best way of studying. Which I truly believe in. I think repetition is the key to studying and key to retaining information. But this needs to be an effective sort of repetition, because you can just repeat yourself, an hour after you learn something, but you don't necessarily retain it. And this is really backed by research. So this was a graph I got from one of these articles I read that summarized some of these effective ways to study, these different learning strategies on your left-hand side, and the effectiveness of long-term learning. In summary, they found that the best way to have effective long-term memory, the best learning strategy, is something called retrieval practice and distributed practice. So what does that mean? Firstly, They did this survey to university students many, many years ago, and they looked at how do people study usually. And to no one's surprise, the strategy that people used was rereading things, just rereading things. And interestingly, studies actually show that just rereading things can help with maybe just short-term memory, but it really is quite not a very effective way for long-term memory, because reading things gives you that sense that, oh yeah, you understand the topic, but actually you won't necessarily remember it. So it's that false sense of confidence, I guess. So what is retrieval learning? This is one of the most effective ways for long-term memory. So retrieval learning is essentially when you try to recall an event. So you are practicing retrieval. You are by remembering or recalling what you have learned without looking at it, you will enhance long-term meaningful learning. So they did a study actually, and this is just a quick graph showing that they looked at two groups of people, one that used retrieval practice and one that used concept maps. So retrieval practice is again when they looked at something, when they tried to learn something, and then later they tried to recall it themselves by writing it down. And then the concept map people were people that just looked at something and try to draw a map while learning. And they tested these individuals with short answer questions, and they found that people that were practicing by trying to recall what they've learned did a lot better. Weirdly enough, they did a similar thing looking at those two groups of people and looked at the people who did retrieval practice using concept maps. So what they did was they got individuals to try to learn something, and then they tried to get them to recall what they learned by drawing a concept map, versus people that just did a concept map while they were learning. And the people, again, that did retrieval practice, just tried to recall what they learned, did a lot better in the test. So ways to do retrieval learning strategies is essentially how to go about it is, you can create mind maps, you can create illustrations through recall, something that you have already studied and you want to solidify. Or you can do retrieval learning by doing group studying. So, you learn a particular topic, and then you go with your friends, and then you teach your peers. You try to remember what you learned, and you sort of just talk about it. And that also solidifies things, solidifies long-term memory. Or another option is to talk out loud. So you just try to remember what you've learned a day ago or 2 days ago. And just a final point on distributed practice. This was the other very effective way of learning, the learning strategy for long-term memory. And in distributed practice, what you do is essentially you want to repeat what you've learned over time to help with long-term retention and memory. So you don't want to just repeat what you've learned within a few hours. Rather, you want to do that after a few weeks, for example. So say I'm studying about acute heart attacks or acute MI today. A few days later or a few weeks later, I will revisit that topic, and that sort of solidifies what you've learned and sort of helps with long-term retention of that information. So the final quote is repetitio est mater studiorum. Through retrieval and spacing your repetition is the take-home message for effective learning. And that concludes my talk. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks.
Thank you to everyone that made tonight's episode possible. Whenever our scholars are thinking about complex problems facing our health systems, we encourage them to think about how they make significant change in the world of healthcare. We are incredibly lucky to have some incredible scholars in the HLA. They use the HLA as a platform to take their ideas and bring them to fruition. If you are interested in the work of the HLA, why not join us at one of our future HLA events? Why not join one of our programs? Why not even become a HLA scholar? Thank you for joining us. My name is Johan Marlwaner, the Director of the HLA, and it's a good night from all of us.